Hello. This is a bit of a new approach, isn't it? So, here's the thing. This right here is the timeline of the video I've been trying to make to introduce the next Roundtable Relay. You can see right here, I've got maybe, 3 minutes of footage done. There's 20 minutes of audio there. This has been like this since, September-ish. I've been meaning to try to get it done, every single weekend, and it's just not happening. I need to come to terms. I can't edit videos anymore. It just, with work, with school, with all of that, I got 10 hours of my week that's dedicated solely to commuting. I can't fit this in anymore. It just doesn't work. Then I had a thought. For so much of this channel's content, we have been focused on encouraging other people to present their ideas in a sort of slideshow format or a document format, as entries into the roundtables and the peasants' perspectives, what have you. So, logically, why don't I just do the same thing? And turns out this is way easier. So moving forward, this is probably going to be my form of content for the foreseeable future. It's what can gel with my life. This took me an hour to put together this PowerPoint. It's probably going to take an hour and a half to record and edit. I could probably get a lot of videos out in this format. Plus, this is a skill I genuinely need to cultivate in me, because I'm going into a scientific field at school, and big part of that is just presenting PowerPoints. If I can get better at just kind of free-form talking over information in a presentation, all of a sudden YouTube becomes a genuine thing I need to invest in again. So, I'm not saying you should artificially inflate my ego that, hey, you're doing really well, here's some feedback, but you might get more videos that way. Anyway, so let's introduce the next Roundtable Relay, which is going to be reworking Mario in Super Smash Bros. And I know a lot of you might be thinking, why this dude? There's so many other characters out there that you could rework in all sorts of ways. Why Mario? Well, first off, in general, I wanted to have a very simple, small-scale topic to follow up with the larger-scale Super Smash Bros. Rework. We're kind of still finding the footing of what this series is going to be. I wanted something accessible, baseline level, that pretty much anybody can participate in. I also think that Mario is just a more interesting character to discuss. You could do something like Sonic or Ganondorf or what have you, obvious candidates for hey, let's just scrap the whole thing and start anew. But there's more layers to Mario. He's not all bad, he's more just old. And I think that creates more interesting discussions because there's a greater variety of ways that people think he should move forward, if he should move at all. I will also admit, I'm partially picking Mario because I've seen the most engagement and controversy from this character in particular. For some reason, people get so heated about Mario specifically, and I will happily exploit that engagement. So, let me set the stage for what I would do. What should he have? First off, obviously, Mario is the de facto face of video games in general. You could argue the most modern generation is more in tune with Minecraft and Fortnite, but for 2010 backwards, he's essentially defined the public consciousness of what gaming is. Platformers are kind of the default of what people think of when they think about video games. As such, I think he should embody platforming. He should be better at it than almost everybody else. This is his house, he knows his way around, and he's gonna outclass you. I know that a lot of people argue that since this is a platform fighter, platformer characters kind of just already embody their genres. I don't think that's enough. And this goes beyond just Mario. I think characters that come from platforming-styled games should embody the unique ways they control in those platforming games. I also think you should be accessible. Duh, this goes without saying. He's the kind of character that a lot of people are going to gravitate towards just out of sheer recognition, so he should provide a good first impression of just really whatever game he's in. That said, I do think he should also be masterable. He should have layers to him. There's kind of sort of this, what's the word I'm like, vanilla reputation that Mario games have, and some of them have earned that, to be fair. But this idea that Mario is kind of just the baseline, that other characters and other franchises are built off of into something more interesting, with unique flavors and approaches and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that's earned, because while Mario is accessible, you can approach playing his games very well, the skill ceiling on his games is also pretty insane, and I think that should be reflected in a game like this. This is kind of a tangent, but I wanted to add it in here somewhere. I don't think Mario should be the how-to-play character. I think he should be the character that teaches the character in the how-to-play video. Like, make that Kirby. I think Kirby is just better of an introduction to a platform fighter overall. So, 3 things. I want Mario to be a platforming god. He needs to have an accessible moveset, and he needs to have a high skill ceiling. If I had to boil it down to 3 things, those are the 3 things I would want from Mario in a platform fighter. Really, any crossover for that matter. So let's talk a bit about what he is now. What's the good, what's the bad, where are we keeping, what are we throwing away? Part of the reason I did pick him for the first episode is, gosh, I am not making... Sorry, I have a weird setup here where I've got monitors on either side of the camera. It's really the only place I can fit it. So I apologize for like the weird, disconcerting kind of half making eye contact. It's just the way this is set up. Anyway, Mario does have some good stuff. I included the image of our Smash Brothers tier list. He was right at the top of the B tier, like right on the cusp of being on A, because he is a very solid groundwork. His moves are simple, he's accessible, and in particular, I want to highlight the ladder combos. I think the sort of up air chains, finishing off in like an up special or a forward air, does give a very nice vibe of platforming through a challenge and being able to capitalize that on, like, grabbing the flagpole. Like, you got the forward air, you got the up special, those feel good, you did the platforming, good job! Unfortunately, he doesn't really build off of that groundwork in an interesting way, to me at least. This is all opinionated, obviously. But with how freaking old he is, he kind of just feels like the basis of the idea of Mario. That I feel like those sorts of ladder combos are the only avenue that he really capitalizes on that. Big part of that is kind of the mobility power creep that the Smash Brothers series has had with every consecutive installment. With every batch of characters, recoveries get higher, they can go in more directions, you get better horizontal momentum, to a point that Mario feels left behind, which for the literal god of platformers, just doesn't feel good. Horizontally especially. Like, I know he's Jumpman, but there's so much more horizontal momentum than there is vertical in the Mario series. If I had to only pick one thing I could fix about Mario, it would probably be some kind of gap closer, because that feels like the biggest missing piece to me. Also, I had to shout this out again, because I think it's the best way of putting this. Everybody knows that Mario's personality is lacking in Super Smash Bros., but in the immortal words of copy and paste Kevin, Mario needs to be more bing bing wahoo. Just more laughs, more smiles, more upbeat sound effects. There's a ton of things you could do there, and all of them would be good. Now, this is more of a me issue. I fully admit that, and I'm sorry if I corrupt anybody with this realization, because it genuinely drives me insane. I really don't like that a friendly character like Mario, who arguably more than any other character in video game history has been the gateway introduction of getting people into video games, of getting people into both his genre and splicing off into others, I really don't like that he messes with the ability for other characters to platform. I know it's a silly, small thematic thing to get hung up over, but I don't like that the major domo for platformers gatekeeps other characters from platforming. Am I crazy? Does that make sense? Let me know. Also, this thing sucks. I hate the Fire Flower. Not just in Smash Brothers, I think it's a shitty power-up in general. This has gotta be one of the lamest signature abilities of any major video game character. With the exception of Galaxy, which admittedly just, Galaxy's Fire Flower is cool. The gravity, the sound design, it's cool. But in almost every other video game, just like the sound design sucks, just a little dink whenever you throw it out at people and several enemies take multiple hits with it, and they all feel so just... It's Mega Man pellet levels of just there's no reaction to the power of this supposed fireball. It makes playing Mario games less interesting, because you're kind of just standing to the side, mashing the B button to just clear out any obstacles in your way, which is kind of half an interesting power fantasy. But the pathetic sound design makes it feel so bad. Worst of all, pretty much every single power-up that has followed has completely outclassed the Fire Flower by doing the same shit but doing something else on top of it. I don't like it. I'm sorry. I think it sucks. So when you take something that's already kind of ass in the game it comes from, and put it into something like Smash Brothers, it can't even play its original role. Because what it's supposed to be is this kind of half-baked power fantasy where it clears the room of any obstacles. Obviously, the way it works in those games would just turn into this obnoxious projectile spamming monster, so you get this dinky-ass, every 3 seconds, with zero impact, zero knockback. I've never felt good using it. I hate getting hit by it. It's such an annoying projectile to get gimped by. And it makes a zoning Mario play like a Mario enemy, which just, I don't have to explain why I don't like that, right? For what the Fire Flower in Smash Brothers is, like his forward smash is so much better at that. It's explosive, it gets rid of enemies, and it actually feels good to use. Arguably, it's one of the best implementations of the Fire Flower. So, here are my targets. I think it's important to maintain the accessible simplicity that Mario has had, while also increasing his overall mobility. He desperately needs to catch up with the rest of the cast because this is something he should be amazing at. Want to get rid of his ability to fuck with other people's platforming, and he needs the bing bing wahoo. So, let's get into what I would do here. I present to you my dissertation on, above all others, the Boomerang Flower is the superior choice for implementation into a Mario Smash Bros. Rework. A boomerang, by nature, is simple. Everybody understands what a boomerang does. You toss it, maybe it hits something, it comes back to you. Everybody understands how that works. However, by its nature, it also creates a higher skill ceiling. We already have proof that this works because Link uses it as well. You toss it behind you, you dodge it when it comes back. You can use that for all sorts of interesting setups. Should note though, I want Mario's boomerang to be limited to a purely horizontal movement pattern, like straight forward, straight back, no angles whatsoever. The boomerang is weightier than a fireball, not hard to do, but you can give a nice satisfying clunk by hitting somebody with that. I think it's healthier for what Mario's kind of playstyle should be in a platform fighter, because it gives him that same kind of approach option that the fireballs currently do. Like, they're slow enough that you can kind of chase after them. But to be able to use it as an approach option, he's got to throw it behind him. Then if you dodge it in some way, it would keep going on the way back. So you can still approach with this, but it's a lot more telegraphed and a lot harder to spam. Kind of something I should have mentioned earlier. But Mario's the kind of character where I feel like he should be the one platforming around other people's zoning, other people's projectiles, not stalling them out with his own. It's another big issue I have with the Cape. I really feel like he's the kind of character that should try to avoid projectiles, not actively intercept them. But the most important aspect of this Boomerang Flower, come on, is that you can jump off of them. This move perfectly encapsulates what I want from a Mario in Smash Brothers. Because on a first impression, like, yeah, it's a boomerang. People know what boomerangs do. You throw it, clunk, comes back to you. Easy, simple, feels good, right? But then you start playing around with it a little bit. You notice that if you dodge out of the way, it'll keep going. So, oh yeah, you can maybe use this for an approach option. That's really cool. But the moment, for whatever reason, that you bounce off of one, oh, the way your synapses would just explode of just, wait, I can use that. And isn't that just a perfect tool for a character like Mario to have? If you use this perfectly, you can create your own moving platform that you can use to extend combos. You want to chase someone off stage horizontally, toss the boomerang behind you, extend really far for the forward smash, and bounce back off of it to make sure you make it back. It would be extremely tricky to use in that way, but none of that would get in the way of the accessibility of its initial purpose. That is what I think Mario should be. That is my pitch. We believe in boomerang supremacy in this household. Kind of following up on that, I think the shell slide is also an amazing option for Mario to have as a special move. Again, very simple, very accessible, fits that sort of gap I missed a dash there. Whoops, that's okay. But it fits that kind of weakness that he has right now. He doesn't have many ways to really affect his horizontal momentum. This gives him that. And again, in the same sort of way the boomerang flower works, while it has this very simple and understandable initial use for it, like you press the button, you start going in that direction, you can run into people, it's fun, it's great. But just like how you can use it in the Mario games, you could use this for some crazy setups. Like, for example, imagine you got the stage right here, and you're shell sliding back, and you've got an opponent right here. You could hop off the shell hits the opponent, bounces off the stage, you bounce off the shell, and come back up after the shell hits them to combo them into a forward air. That would feel amazing. And there's a lot of things in Mario's history that could do something like this. It's why I'm a big proponent for custom moves coming back. You could have an up special using the clouds, which platformer character creating platforms to help him out. I don't need to explain that. Cappy, hopping off of Cappy, kind of similar sort of role to the boomerang flower, but one where you can kind of plant him in a way. Or Wonder's Bubbles. And Wonder's Bubbles in particular, I think it'd be a genuinely amazing ability for Mario specifically. Because it kind of has that sort of interaction with projectiles that the cape has, but instead of sending them back to an opponent, you are turning those projectiles into a platform for you to use as you juggle them upwards. That's amazing. I combo that with the boomerang. There's so many cool little intricacies you could use with abilities like this. And again, they're all pretty simple as a baseline. But we haven't even gotten to my favorite aspect of what moves like this could be for Mario. Because I talked about how I don't like how Mario gets in the way of other characters' platforming. He almost feels like a platforming bully in that way. But now, with the way that these sort of things would work, other characters could also benefit from having these kind of tools on the field. And that turns Mario from a character that actively hinders other characters' platforming to a character that makes every single other person better at platforming just by being around. And for someone with the personality of Mario, I think that's so much better. So that's big thing number one for me. I want Mario to get some extremely simple moves that don't seem like much on the surface, but once you start mastering them, oh my gosh, you can pull off some insane shit. I will plant my flag and say that is something that Mario should absolutely embody in whatever crossover game he shows up in. It can be a MOBA, it can be a first-person shooter, doesn't matter, Mario should have something like that. Second thing, I want Mario to have a unique mechanic. Because in pretty much every single one of his games, platformers or otherwise, there's some sort of timed jump that lets him perform better, and I think that should be in Smash Brothers. I would want this to function pretty much exactly as it does in his core series. Perfectly timing jumps benefits him in some way. I think there's two options for that. You can either just solely tie it to the jump button, or, because I think it would be funny, just make it his neutral special. Just make it that sort of rising hitbox of a jump, kind of a toned down version of his up special, where he just goes up, if he hits somebody, he punches them, coin pops out for visual flavor. Nice, simple, arguably kind of boring, until someone presses it again right when they hit the ground and they see that little 200 pop up. Anybody who has played a Mario game instantly knows what's going on there. Although I should note, you probably couldn't have the full 200, 400, 800, etc. That's probably asking too much in the chaos of Smash Brothers, so maybe a triple jump is kind of too few at the same time. It's something to be workshopped. I just wanted to bring the ability here. And I do think it is worth workshopping, because something like this is completely invisible on a first impression of Mario. A new player picking up Mario, using all his tilts and aerials and whatnot, they're not going to notice this initially. And Mario is still going to feel pretty good. Like, you could just bake this onto current Mario, and it would be hard to even notice at first. But once you do notice, either because of accidental timing or seeing somebody else doing it, it unlocks an entirely new layer of how to play this guy. Because what I'm imagining is that if you get enough of these perfectly timed jumps off of the stage, or an opponent, or one of your Boomerang flowers, or what have you, you would get a power-up. Not literally, like you don't get the whole, boing, boing, boing. Like, you don't suddenly get the fire flower suit, or what have you, but your next move gets that sort of effect of oh, you did good, here's your reward. Kind of building off of what Mario has right now with the forward air, with the up special, bookending his up air combos, but now with so many more ways to do that. And you could use this to show off the ridiculous amount of stuff this guy has. For example, imagine he still has the forward air, but once you get this little jumping power-up, he swings the hammer down instead. Or whatever his up special is. If you get enough jumps to unlock this power-up state, it could turn into the propeller hat and just absolutely shred people while carrying them upwards, becoming a version of his up special that's genuinely meant to carry people off the top of the screen. There is so much you could do with something like this, and it wouldn't get in the way of that initial first impression, that initial accessibility at all. This is the other half of changes that I really want to see from Mario. Just some kind of implementation of that classic mechanic of the triple jump, of the 200, 400, whatever have you, and creating some kind of reward system in the context of a platform fighter that embodies how that works. Now, those are the two big ones, but I do have a couple of just small things that I also want to quickly mention. For one, come on. This is the easiest level 3 super, final smash, how is this not a thing? It was literally the climax of the movie, but yeah, easiest change ever. The other thing I want to bring up is bonds. People always talk about, hey, this character needs to have this ability because it's super important to his history. You gotta have this sort of gameplay implementation because it's a core part of how they play in the original game. But something that's honestly Smash Brothers in general really fails at is character bonds. Because I would personally argue, arguably more so than 95% of the abilities that characters have, their ties to other characters are what define them the most. And I'll be fully honest, I don't know what kind of form that would take in a game like Smash Brothers. A couple of things I'll throw out is maybe a level 2 super where Mario and Luigi do a team-up attack together. Or a victory screen, where you have the Smash 64 thing of Peach kissing Mario on the nose. I don't know if I want to be that heartless to say an up special where you jump off of Yoshi, but that would also be really, really funny. But this is something, like, if I had to choose one change to bring to Smash Brothers as a franchise overall, this is where I feel like its biggest weakness is. You have all of these beloved characters, but the emotional ties that bring them together are just gone. And I would like to see that shown off in some way. I think it's important, and untapped potential for design by using it. And I could keep going, but I think I've given a general idea of the trajectory that I would want from Mario in this sort of game. So now, it's your turn. Same concept, same format, setting up a document, people can type theirs into a Google Docs or Google Slides or what have you, and in a live stream down the line, we will be covering them for the next roundtable. Just a couple of things I do want to note. With the subject matter of a single character in a crossover game, there's inevitably going to be a lot of overlap as people are picking and choosing from the same pool of stuff. Like, there's only so many ways you can write an intro for what Mario should be in a Smash Brothers game. As such, I'm likely going to start skimming through entries much sooner than I did for the Reworking Super Smash Brothers, mostly just to keep things moving. Also important, arguing he shouldn't change at all is valid. If you want to plant your flag and say, no, he's perfect for what he is now, like, do it. It's also perfectly valid to try to build off of what your Rework Smash Bros. Concept was and try to talk about how Mario would work in the format that you created. I think that's also very interesting. Really, just any approach that is about Mario in Smash Brothers is good here. And that's everything. There will be a link in the description to get to the document, and the live stream will probably just happen when there's enough people that have submitted. See you all then.